Die Trump-Regierung musste sich offenbar in den ersten 2 Monaten mit dem Paradoxon herumschlagen, einerseits für den Frieden zu werben, andererseits eine Kriegspartei zu unterstützen und damit den Krieg am Laufen zu halten. Und auch nach der Einstellung von Waffenlieferungen und der geheimdienstlichen Unterstützung ist die Ukraine massiv abhängig von der US-Unterstützung. Man denke etwa an den Zugriff auf Starlink von Elon Musk. Warum vollziehen die USA nicht einen völligen Rückzug aus der Ukraine-Unterstützung? Fürchten sie einen völligen Zusammenbruch der ukrainisch-russischen Front und somit eine Schwächung der eigenen Position in den Friedensverhandlungen?
I don't think the United States is afraid of anything in this regard. We fear nothing. There's nothing to fear. The Trump administration is politically committed to peace. And so to the extent that the United States, massages its negotiating position, it's for the sole purpose of achieving peace. It's part of a larger, broader American strategy of decoupling from Europe. I think we're going to see the United States and NATO, have a divorce. And I think the United States is also going to be telling the EU that we're not besties anymore. And when looked in this broader context, Ukraine is simply a blip on the radar. We don't like Ukraine. I've said this from day one. I've said it on this program. The Ukrainians aren't our friends. In fact, the more Ukraine behaves like Ukraine, the more it becomes apparent that they are our enemies. When you have a Ukrainian elite airborne brigade telling the Ukrainian diaspora in America to rise up and attack the United States, you are inviting your own destruction at the hands of America, not Russia. When you engage in a cyber attack targeting an American social media platform, because you're angry at the owner of this platform, you are highlighting that you are the enemy of America, not our friends. The Ukrainians need to be very careful here. And if they're listening to this program, and if there's any Germans out there who are sympathetic to the Ukrainian cause, let me make this very clear. They are walking on thin ice. We will crush them. We will destroy them. We will annihilate them if they want to be our enemies. Right now, we tolerate them because we recognize that they were dragged into this process by a prior administration with whom this administration has broken with completely. Ukraine is confused because when they see America, they still somehow believe that the Biden administration is in power. There is no Biden administration anymore. There is a revolution that has transpired in America, and part of this revolution is to unplug from this proxy conflict that brought us dangerously close to nuclear war with Russia. We aren't here for Ukraine. We're not here for the betterment of Ukraine. We are pursuing policies that are to the benefit of the United States. And if Ukraine gets in the way, we will crush them instantly. They have no leverage here. I don't know what they think they're doing. We are offering them the best deal possible. That is to accept Russia's terms now and bring an end to the fighting now. We can put pressure on Russia if Ukraine accepts the terms to bring an end to the fighting now. This will preserve life. This will preserve property. This will preserve treasure. This will give Ukraine a chance to survive in a post-conflict environment. But if Ukraine thinks that by extending this conflict, somehow they're going to get America to change its mind and reverse course and go back to the policies of the Biden administration, they are literally insane. Ukraine has no leverage here, none whatsoever. The credibility of the Ukrainian government in the United States is zero. It doesn't matter that Democrats care about Ukraine. The Democrats aren't in power, and they won't be in power for at least 2 years. There's no potential of them resuming this. Ukraine won't survive 2 years. Ukraine won't survive until the summer. And so, that's where we're at right now. This is, it's difficult to be a Ukrainian today. It's difficult to be a Ukrainian negotiator because there's nothing to negotiate. This is like the Germans going to the Russians, General Krebs going to General Chukov at the fall of Berlin and saying, I want to negotiate terms of surrender. And Chukov said, there are no terms of surrender. It's unconditional surrender. Sign the paper or die. And that's where Ukraine is today. Sign the paper or die.
US-Präsident Trump verfolgt das Ziel eines Friedensschlusses zwischen der Ukraine und Russland äußerst hartnäckig. Zumindest oberflächlich scheint es derzeit das Hauptaugenmerk der US-Außenpolitik zu sein. Es gibt aber zahlreiche geopolitische Experten, die die tatsächlichen Motive hinterfragen. Während Trump in Richtung Russland auf Dialog und Entspannung setzt, verschärft er seinen Kurs gegenüber China, droht sogar offen mit Handelskrieg und Militär. Braucht Trump Frieden in Europa, um die US-Ressourcen für den Kampf gegen China mobilisieren zu können? Plant er womöglich Russland diplomatisch zu umwerben und somit dessen Bündnis mit China zu lockern? Und wird sich Russland darauf einlassen?
I don't know. The last time I looked, the Russians weren't governed by children. Children believe in fairy tales, and children can be influenced by promises of, toys and playtime and this and that. The Russians aren't children. The Russians live in a real world. The current status of this real world is that Russia and China, prior to the special military operation beginning, met in Beijing in February of 2022, where they issued a 5,000-word joint document. Read that document very carefully. That's the direction, the strategic direction that both Russia and China are involved in. It involves taking down the rules-based international order, which was the primary foreign policy direction of the Biden administration. Now, Donald Trump has said that he is against sustaining the rules-based international order. And so there seems to be some confluence here between Russia, China, and the United States. The United States is not looking for a war with anybody, but the United States has to untangle the complications of decades of bad policy. And so what Trump is doing with China is basically setting the stage. But what you didn't say is that right now the Chinese and the Americans are talking about Donald Trump going to Beijing in April. Now, why would the President of the United States go to Beijing for a major foreign policy trip if he wants to go to war with China? He's going to Beijing to reset relations with China. He's preparing the battlefield by at least educating the Chinese about what the potential could be if they don't reset relations. But Trump isn't dumb enough to believe that he has any leverage over China. He's going to meet with China to normalize relations between China and the United States, to take us away on a path away from military confrontation. We recognize, both the Chinese and the United States, that we have complicated economic relations, and that especially in the Pacific, we have some geopolitical entanglements that have to be worked out. But we're not going to go to war over it. This is the important factor. When Donald Trump speaks of pulling out of Europe, it's not that we're pulling out military power that has to be reallocated to the Pacific so that we can fight the Chinese. It's so that we reduce our exposure globally so that there can be a reallocation of diplomatic and economic priorities to the Pacific. Why are we disentangling ourselves from the European Union? Because we recognize that the European Union is an economic loser for us. We don't want to continue policies that entangle us in Europe to the detriment of our potential in the Pacific. But it's not about pulling military forces out and replugging for a war. It's about reprioritizing our national direction. We want to peacefully coexist with China. You see, the concept of splitting China and Russia apart is a Kissinger type thinking back to the Nixon era, the Cold War, where our primary interface with the world was military in nature. So we thought in military terms to weaken a Soviet-Chinese axis by splitting them and turning them against each other. Today, we are seeking to de-emphasize war as the primary mechanism of American power projection. Instead, we're trying to emphasize diplomacy and economic engagement. We are seeking to economically engage with Russia, not to weaken China, but to prevent war from breaking out in Europe and elsewhere. And I think, given the fact that we have expressed a new appreciation for reality when we speak of our foreign policy, that these realists also understand that you cannot divide Russia and China, that will not happen. That actually, if you want to have good relations with China, you need to have good relations with Russia, because otherwise they will come together against you. But if you are in good favor with both, you can work with both to achieve sound, comprehensive, mutually beneficial economic relations. And that's the direction the United States heading. We're not heading towards a war with China. We're heading towards peace with China. And I think you'll see this when Donald Trump meets with Xi Jinping in Beijing in April.
Die EU-Führung will von einem Kurswechsel gegenüber Russland nichts wissen. EU-Kommissionspräsidentin von der Leyen kündigte jüngst ein Aufrüstungspaket in Höhe von 800 Milliarden Euro an. Der französische Präsident Macron warnte vor der angeblichen russischen Bedrohung des ganzen Kontinents und sprach von einem nuklearen Abwehrschirm. Polen will seine Militärausgaben verdoppeln. Können die EU-Zwerge wirklich militärisch mithalten mit Russland ohne US-Unterstützung? Haben sie das Rüstungspotenzial dazu? Und was lässt sich realistisch gesehen mit den 800 Milliarden Euro anfangen?
Well, look, we just have to look to history as our guide. In 2022, Olaf Scholz, the former Chancellor of Germany, proudly announced a $100 billion infusion, 100 billion euro infusion into Germany's defense to rebuild Germany, to prepare Germany to be able to stand up against the Russian threat. Here we are, let's just say 2 years later in 2024, that money was gone and Germany's military was weaker, shrinking. What happened to 100 billion? First of all, it's a loan to themselves, which means immediately you have to pay back the loan. So right off the bat, interest payments alone chop that 100 billion down to, 67 billion. And the longer you hold on to the money, the greater the appreciation is. So a year in, they had already spent most of that, or at least half of that money, paying the loan back. Now they have 50 billion euro to do what? To invest into literally a money pit. This isn't about refurbishing my home. I mean, my wife and I have been looking at our house for some time and saying, look, it's a house getting close to 50 years old. There's things that have to happen here. So we need to, replace this, replace that, upgrade this, upgrade that. And we can do that because the house is structurally sound. There's no black mold. There's no rot here. And so the money that we allocate will do the job we want it to do. Get the house up into working order, sustain the house, make it a valuable property for years to come. But if we went down the road, there's a house that's been abandoned for 30 years and it's rotten. I mean, it may look like a house, but when you go inside, you can smell the mold, you can smell the rot. You touch the wood, it's falling apart. We can't take the same amount of money that would be used to bring our house up in order and invest it in that. In fact, we invested in and we would lose that money and the structure would become even worse because as we seek to try to repair it, we expose more frailties and faults and eventually the house will collapse. Europe's military posture is derived from a Cold War era, structure that was designed to confront the Soviet Union in a defensive war. They put a lot of money into building structures that were designed to repel or a Soviet attack. At the end of the Cold War, when the Soviet Union went away, NATO, instead of restructuring itself, maintained this Cold War era structure. Its militaries were never given different missions. They were always given the mission of Article 5 collective defense. But that mission no longer existed. There was no longer an impetus. So the house stood there and started to rot because we didn't maintain it. They didn't maintain it. They didn't put in the investments. They started doing other things like buying a car, buying a vacation home, going to Libya, going to Afghanistan, instead of focusing on what needed to be focused on. They forgot about high intensity conflict. They don't know how to build tanks anymore. They don't know how to use tanks anymore. They don't know how to do anything anymore. NATO is broken. It is a rotten edifice. It cannot function. And you're going to take 800 billion euro and invest it in there, first of all, it's a 14% interest rate. So you're borrowing 800 billion euro, and immediately you got to start making payments. And the longer you hold on to that money, the more that money goes into making the payments. So you're not getting 800 billion euros worth of military investment. An investment into what? You literally have to tear down NATO and start over, which would be my advice. Instead of taking 800 billion and trying to rebuild this Cold War thing, you can't. It would cost you 800 trillion to do that. And you still won't get it done because your entire defense structures aren't geared. You're not thinking right. You don't have the focus. You don't have the infrastructure. You don't have the training. You don't have anything. So this is a joke. Shows you how immature Europe is as an entity, as an institution, that they think that this problem can be solved by spending their way out of it, instead of taking an honest look at what they're doing. Is Russia a threat? That is the fundamental question. And the answer is no, Russia is not. So therefore, what kind of defense structures do you need for Europe? Do you need to spend money to be prepared to be engaged in offensive military operations against Russia? The answer is no, you don't. How about defensive military operations against Russia? No, Russia's not threatening to invade. So what military do you need? That's what Europe needs to ask themselves. What military do we need? Is Europe going to be an expeditionary force projecting power into Africa? The answer is no, it should not be. Is Europe going to be an expeditionary force projecting power into Asia? No, it should not be. Is Europe going to have collective defense? Maybe that's what they should be looking at. Realistic collective defense so that you can prioritize your spending, domestic and military, and not bankrupt yourself in the process. I just solved Europe's problem right now. If they listen to me, they'll be doing quite well in the future, but they won't listen to me. They're going to bankrupt themselves. I can guarantee you this, that 800 billion will only make Europe weaker. It will destroy them economically. It'll get them involved in projects they cannot sustain. It's like starting a home improvement project and saying, okay, honey, let's rip up the floors. And we rip up the floors. And then we start going, we go, oh, we ran out of money. We can't replace the floors, but we got holes in the floor. We just ruined the house. And now we have to spend even more, but we don't have. So we borrow more. This is what's happening here. Europe is literally going to commit economic suicide by going down this path. And all Russia has to do is sit back and laugh. This is the easiest victory Russia has ever been given. Just sit back and laugh at Europe as they commit suicide. This is why America's unplugging from you, because you are insane collectively. You have allowed yourselves to be hijacked by these unelected bureaucrats who are committing 800 billion euro to a project that doesn't need to exist. And where's the objections? Where's people standing up saying, no, no, we're not going to do this? That's a good question.
Der ungarische Ministerpräsident Orbán betonte Ende letzter Woche, dass Deutschland unter Friedrich Merz mit seinem eigenen schuldenfinanzierten Aufrüstungspaket wieder die stärkste Armee Europas stellen könnte. Er warnt, so etwas haben wir seit dem Zweiten Weltkrieg nicht mehr gesehen. Werden die Amerikaner und Russen das zulassen? Was meinst du dazu? Und hat Deutschland überhaupt die nötigen Voraussetzungen dafür? Wirtschaftlich, infrastrukturell, aber auch sozial?
Orban's drawing historical parallels between the methodology used by Nazi Germany to finance the rebuilding of the Wehrmacht and what Germany's proposing today. But the times, they have changed. Again, Germany will not succeed. First of all, Merz isn't Hitler. He won an election, but he doesn't have a national mandate. His party, won 29% of the vote, somewhere around there, 30%. But AFD's right behind him is the second largest. They're not for it. And AFD's on the assert, is moving up. He has huge economic problems. And this isn't, 1930s Germany. The Treaty of Versailles doesn't resonate in the minds of the German people. The threat of communism. People often forget how much threat Germany believe they face from communism. The things that united Germany to come together as a nation. These don't exist. Germany is a fundamentally divided country. And Merz thinks he's going to come in and seize people's assets and take away retirement funds and to fund a military that doesn't need to be built. And again, I point out the Wehrmacht was starting from scratch. I just want to remind people they had 100,000-man army that they inherited from the end of World War I. And so what they built was built new. Imagine new structures, fresh structures. Merz is dealing with this rotten house. This rotten house. He can't rebuild this. And what is he going to recommend that he starts from scratch, tear everything down? I don't think the United States. This is why we want to unplug, because we don't want to participate in this insanity, and we don't want to be tied to a German economy that will shatter and sink and fail. Europe is not our responsibility, and we're not assuming any responsibility for this disaster. And Russia doesn't care because Russia's looking at it saying, "Oh, you can't swim, but you're jumping in the deepest part of the pool. What do you want us to do? Rescue you? No, they're going to drown." This is up for the German people to decide. My advice to the German people is move as rapidly as possible to seek a vote of no confidence over this new government in parliament and have snap elections again and get the right people elected, because otherwise you're heading down a highway to hell.
Lass uns ins Detail gehen. Wenn man sich die Aufrüstungspläne ansieht, dann umfassen sie zum Beispiel neue Typen von Superkampfpanzern, eigene hochmoderne Kampfjets, eigene Hyperschallraketen und so weiter. Welchen Nutzen hätten solche Waffentypen, wenn es tatsächlich zu einem Krieg gegen Russland käme? Tragen neue Kampfpanzer und Kampfjets zur Verteidigung Deutschlands und der EU bei?
Sounds like the old wonder weapons. I mean, where have we heard this before? Geez, I don't know. Is it like a V1, a V2, the ME-260? I mean, my God, it's like he's turning into something. Maybe he'll grow a little mustache and start wearing darker uniforms, and then maybe he'll put an armband on and he can start marching around goose stepping. What an idiot! Super battle. What does that mean? A super battle tank. What does advanced fighter jets? Does Germany have an industry capable of producing this? Do they understand what it takes to produce aircraft at this level in the quantities necessary, how expensive that is, and how quickly these aircraft become outdated? Hypersonic missiles. Good luck. All I'm saying is Germany will fail on every one of these. Europe will fail on every one of these because these are difficult things to do. And, unless an individual nation takes the lead, are they going to do this in a joint project? Every time Europe comes together to create a Eurofighter or a Euro, it's stupid. It falls apart. It's a tank by committee. The Italians are going to want the reverse gear because they retreat a lot. The French are going to want a lot of neutral because they don't like to move. The Germans will, of course, insist on multiple gears going forward. But that, then you have a tank that can't do anything. I'm joking, of course, but my point is, this is a lot of stuff written on paper. What's it backed up with? What's the reality of it? There's a reason why the United States has been the #1 provider of weapons to Europe over the course of the past decades. That's because we know how to build weapons and you don't. All your weapons suck. Nothing you build works. Nothing you build survives in combat. Look at the wonderful Leopard tank. Oh, it burns really good. What are you going to build, a super Leopard? I mean, what are we going to call it? The Panther? Oh, gosh, you had a tank named after that. I don't know. That didn't work out so well. The Tiger. No, that didn't work out either. I mean, literally nothing Germany builds will survive on a modern battlefield because the Germans, they're not a warrior nation anymore. They're not a warrior nation. And to build weapons that are useful to warriors, you have to have warriors tell you what they need. What you have right now are fat bureaucrats sitting down, eating schnitzel, drinking beer, getting fatter, and just trying to use these various defense projects to make money, to steal money from the German people and give it to industrialists who are getting even fatter. Look at the size. You should really take a look. If you've got thin industrialists, maybe they're looking out for the best interests of Germany. But look at the waist size of these people. They're fat. Why? Because they just sit down, they eat. They live corpulent lifestyles. Germans have to be smarter than this. You don't want to be a warrior nation. You know what you made better than anybody for a while? Automobiles. There was a time when the Mercedes was it, man, the BMW, Porsche. I even dreamed of owning a Porsche. Nice German-made Porsche 911 SC Turbo, rough modified, baby. I was going to take this thing to the streets. I never earned enough money, but the point is that Germany has things they can be proud of building, things that make them world leaders. You don't want to be a militarized nation anymore. It hasn't worked out for you ever. You will be destroyed. Go to Berlin, go outside the Reichstag, look at the plinths there, and look at the tanks on those plinths, the T-35-85s, T-34-85s. You want those replaced with T-90s? Because that is a distinct possibility. Germany needs to stop this. And the other thing Germany needs to also start looking at, look at the electoral map. Last time I checked, it was pretty much all of former West Germany in black and all of the former East Germany in blue. You're a fundamentally divided country right now. You haven't been a unified Germany for very long. The glue that holds you together may not be as strong as you think. And if you continue down this path, you may find yourself to be a divided nation. And I would say this, if I were in the CIA involved in regime change operations or disrupting, using covert political action, Germany is the easiest target I could imagine. I could break you up in a heartbeat. I could divide you. I could have you fundamentally collapsed as a nation state. I could get you so entangled in stupidity in the continent that you wouldn't believe. Just why not learn to live in peace? Why not learn to be productive in a constructive, nonviolent manner? Why do you have to revert to the roots that caused you so much problems? A militarized, industrialized Germany is a threat to the world. And the United States will view it as such. And we will destroy you again.
Dann lass uns andersherum fragen. Was braucht Deutschland, um sich wirklich verteidigen zu können? Bräuchte Deutschland ein funktionierendes, modernes Luftabwehrsystem? Braucht Deutschland eigene Atomwaffen zur Abschreckung? Was würde wirklich Deutschlands Sicherheit garantieren?
Air defense weapons against what? There's a movie, Field of Dreams, and there was this, the voice. If you build it, they will come. Now, he was talking about a baseball field, and if you build it, the people are going to come and watch it. I would ask Germany to think about that. If you build it, they will come. If you turn yourself into a society that has great highways, great cars, factories that produce great consumer goods, if you build it, the world will come to you. They will. If you build air defense, what's going to come to you? Things that destroy your air defense. My God, if Germany goes nuclear weapons, all you've done is turned yourself into a nuclear target. Do you really think that Germany can build a nuclear deterrent against Russia? Do you understand what that takes? You don't have the capacity. The moment you build one nuclear weapon, Russia will target every major city in Germany. What, are you going to get a lucky shot off, take out Moscow? Okay, great. Congratulations. Now Germany ceases to exist along with all of Europe. This is the dumbest thinking in the world. Why does Germany insist on committing suicide by re-embracing their militaristic past? There is no justification for any of this. Russia does not pose a threat to Germany. All Germany has to do is re-embrace its industrial potential for good, to build things that are useful to civilians around the world, to become a global leader, to embrace diplomacy. Imagine if Germany invested all that money they want to invest in air defense. Imagine if you double or tripled your diplomatic corps, empowered them with legislation that said, go forth and make peace. Go forth and repair relations. Send business delegations to Russia and to China, not to de-link or to impose some sort of American, dominance over them, but to talk about genuine economic relations between China and Germany that would be beneficial to both. Imagine if Germany did that. what kind of leader it could be. To go back again on your militaristic industrial, the militarized industrialism, it's a model that doesn't work for Germany. Not only a bad look, it's a bad cause. And we crossed the Atlantic twice to defeat you. Don't make us do it a third time, because we will.
Liebe Zuschauer, wenn euch unsere Beiträge gefallen, teilt sie unbedingt in den sozialen Medien. Abonniert unseren Kanal und drückt auf die Glocke, damit ihr keine Veröffentlichung von Gegenpol verpasst.